just about to start. Councillor Wink is in the waiting room. It should catch up with me in a moment here. Yes, we are ready to roll. Mr. Mayor, we are set to go.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, Council and members of SLT. I see we have quorum, so I call to order this regular council meeting of Monday, November 2nd, 2020. First thing to do is to approval of agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink, be it resolved that the agenda for the November 2nd regular meeting of Council be adopted. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for any changes or additions to the agenda.
Any changes to the agenda that has been explained by the clerk? Not seeing any. I will return to the clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Okay. And now we have to, after looking at the agenda, does any council member have a pecuniary interest to declare or a general nature thereof? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
So noted, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And before we get to the fire chief and his presentations, I do have 4 announcements that I would like to make before we do that. Number 1, this past Wednesday, the Pelham Panther hockey team, Bantam Double Bs, met at the MCC. This team was declared co-champions in their division in an all-Ontario series that was never played because of COVID-19. The team on Wednesday received their championship banner and their championship red hats. Congratulations to this great team for making Pelham proud, and also a shout out to their coaching staff led by head coach Jack DeCourts. Way to go, guys. Thank you for bringing some trophies to Pelham. The second is Enbridge Gas of Ontario. Last week donated $5,000 to the Peace Park, showing to members of the community that they are indeed a great corporate citizen. Enbridge has various pipelines crossing through town lands, and Banshell Chairman Gail Volches gladly accepted the donation. We all remember the Banshell, and it was a long summer not having those concerts, and let's hope that next year we're back there again. Number 3, third announcement. Viewers will notice that Councillor Bob Hildebrand is absent from today's council meeting. Councillor Hildebrand's mother passed last week, and Bob's attending to family business and funeral arrangements the past several days. His mother, depending on what government agency you talk to, was either 100, 99, or 98 years old. Either way, she was a grand lady. Bob assured us that his mother was a great person and a greater mom. Council sends our condolences to the Hildebrand family. And last announcement concerns Pelham Cares. I will turn this over to Councillor Olson, who has donated many hours to this organization. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. A lot of things have had to change because of COVID-19, and one of the things that has changed is the Pelham food drive, Pelham Cares food drive, and this typically raises or collects about 2/3 of our annual need for the community. One of the things I would like to point out is that Pelham Cares was dependable and ready when the COVID was the emergency was declared in March, and their volunteers were there at the Pelham Cares house on Highway 20 to meet the needs of the community. And one of the things I would also point out to everyone listening is that for every $1 you choose to donate, we can assemble $5 worth of food. So this is an important way that that the community can give to us. But in any event, it was arranged through Director Van Ravensway to have MCC available to Pelham Cares for the Thursday and Friday from 8:30 to 7:30 or 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 to 3 for the next 4 weekends leading up to our usual time of December the 5th. So we hope that people can take advantage of this opportunity to make donations. What we need, if you can't give us, make a donation in money, we need hamburger helper, chilies and stews, canned fruit, juice boxes and school snacks for the kids, flaked ham, chicken and turkey, Jello and pudding mix, cookies and baking supplies, soap dish soap, paper towels, shampoo and conditioner, and I think we could probably also say that we need things like, well, they did say paper towels, I'm sorry. But please support us. Looking forward to seeing a big turnout and a big delivery for Pelham Cares. We're going to put out 3,000 boxes of food, the large food boxes for families this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. 36 or 37 years in the neighborhood, in the community for Pelham Cares. Is that right?
Yes, it is, and it's Pelham Cares was designed by the community to meet the needs by the community. It's a true grassroots organization.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Olson, Councillor Olson. Madame, so next on the agenda, I see that we'll go into presentations, and the first is the from the Fire Chief, Chief Limburner. You have the floor, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor. So through you, Mr. Mayor, Council, senior staff, and all residents who are attending this or participating in this meeting. It's been a busy weekend. We've had quite an increase in some of the numbers across Pelham, the region, and the province. One thing I wanted to kind of bring it to your attention that's COVID related, but more importantly, fire related, was that since our community center is quite active with sporting activities, we're restricting parents to one parent per child into the building, which results in a number of people staying outside. And in the warmer weather, it was more sitting around the trunk of the car having a beverage, which we addressed, and it hasn't been an issue. But what has repeated itself a number of times and has really come up as a big safety concern to myself is that people are now congregating out in the parking lot behind their cars, and they're bringing fire pits into the parking lot. We had another incident on Friday night. We've had a number of incidents prior to that. And just to let council know that I'm at the point where I'm going to start issuing fines. And there's no way around. We can't play around with this. It's a definite safety issue. But unfortunately, the way things usually play out is when I issue a fine, the first phone that rings is a councillor's phone. So I'm just giving you the heads up that we're going to start to crack down on these people, and they might not like the end result. So our ultimate goal is safety. So having said that, Cases across, in Pelham, we're at a total of 54 cases. Currently today, we have 6 active cases. There's one municipality that has 0 active cases. Across Niagara, we had 20 today. We had over 50 through the weekend. We're at 1,482 total cases, 164 active cases, 1,244 have recovered, and we've had 74 deaths. Across the province, we've had almost 1,000 again today. We're at 77,655 with 66,407 recovered, and deaths are at 3,152. Across the country, 239,000 total cases, approximately 200,000 have recovered, and we have just over 10,202 deaths. Our case doubling time has gone down slightly to 52 days. Region Public Health is currently working with 11 outbreaks. They have resolved 53 of them. Our reproduction rate sits at 1.4, and as I've said before, anything below 1 is good. Anything above 1 means we're growing. Our positivity testing rate is at 1.3. And if we look at infections, community spread leads the numbers at 62.7%. Community or close contact, is at 62.7. Community spread at 26.7, and travel 7.6. 44.9% in males, 55.1% in females. Most cases are predominantly between the 20 and 39-year-olds, and a good sign of this, I guess, is Niagara Falls reported today in one of our meetings that there's a number of bars over the weekend that were loaded right up with people far beyond their capacity levels with no social distancing. There's quite a number of stories on the news today, Vancouver and some of the other bigger cities, that this younger generation is not getting it. And they're kind of defying our guidelines, our rules. And that's really what is contributing to our numbers, is the younger crowd. So anyways, that's all I have for tonight. If there's any questions.
Yeah. If 1 or 2 questions for myself first, Chief, is the higher numbers, what was it, today and yesterday, actually coincide almost to the day 2 weeks from Thanksgiving. Is that a correct assumption that the Thanksgiving families getting together perhaps caused this upsurge?
Well, it starts out with Thanksgiving. It starts out with any kind of large gatherings. And yes, that did contribute, but it's more than 14 days, because within that 14-day period, if the Thanksgiving people become infected, then the Thanksgiving people give it to another group of people and so forth. So the 14 really becomes 28 days because of the cycle goes through. So as people get infected, they just keep spreading it. So Thanksgiving is going to last longer than 14 days. And another contributing factor to these numbers is that there's a lot of household spreads now. So as I said last week in a report, there's one family that had a pet that was infected, but also 4 other members in their home were infected by one member of the house. So there's a lot of household spreads taking place right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And going back to the fires in the parking lot, the CAO gave me a heads up on that earlier on this afternoon, and wow, that's, talk about something. Yeah, it seems rather strange to be having that happening in the MCC parking lot. It's kind of bizarre.
Well, unfortunately, the times have changed, and people are, they're not, they're really restricted in the social aspect of things, and they're resorting to different methods, and this is unfortunately one of them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Chief. Any other questions from any councillors? Councillor Hahn.
Yes, through the mayor, I had my hand up earlier actually when Councillor Olson was speaking about Pelham Cares.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering if perhaps, Chief, I know I always go there with the signs, but I'm going to go there again, and that is the portable signs. I'm just wondering if we would be able to make use of some of the portable signs we have at the different fire halls to do some advertising with regards to the drop-offs for Pelham Cares at the MCC. If we can just use that as an opportunity to highlight that opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. We have the one electronic sign at Station 2. I'll get that changed. I'll just confirm all the dates that the collection, and we'll use our old manual sign here at Station 1 with the hopes that maybe we'll get an electronic sign one day. But we'll do some signage for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that shot, Chief. I know you guys have been after an electronic sign for a little while, maybe this year. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator, for information. Unless there are any further questions to the Chief?
Nope,
We'll start with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update by the Chief Administrative Officer.
Yes, and Mr. CAO, you have the floor.
No report this evening, Council.
Oh.
Thank you for the time.
Okay, short and sweet. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the delegation by the Chair of the Cannabis Control Committee, Tim Nohara.
Okay, Mr. O'Hara, you have the floor.
Can anybody hear me? I'm just connecting.
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to be back. It's been a little while. I must say I've enjoyed the break, but I hope everybody's doing well. So I see the first slide is on. Can I control this, or can I just ask it to be advanced?
If you just ask for it to be advanced, I think it was sent to us in a PDF, so she will scroll down through.
That's perfect. Thank
you.
So I just want to give you a brief update. The committee has had 2 meetings now back in the fall, and I want to quickly touch on sort of looking back retrospectively, the 14 months before we took our summer break, which really then leads us to what we're doing this current year, which is our plans for the fall, winter, spring. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So just as a summary and overview, we accomplished quite a bit last year, beginning with the extension of the interim control bylaw, which is under appeal, the research that we conducted in the fall of last year, especially, and into the spring, concerning all aspects relating to regulating cannabis, the odor bylaw that we passed in the spring of 2020, and amended to include AMPS fines as well. That was passed, and the implementation is presently underway. We'll talk about the implementation in a little bit. And then the official plan amendment, number 9, and was passed on July the 13th, along with the zoning bylaw amendment on the same date. So those two, the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, are what we call our proactive tools, and the odorous industries nuisance bylaws are sort of second line of defense or reactive tool. And then the last thing we did in July, before we took a break in August, was a small amendment to the site plan control bylaw that would explicitly subject indoor cannabis and hemp related uses to site plan control. In terms of the support we had to achieve this, it was exceptional. Council provided support for expert legal, planning, and odor experts to help us put together this regulatory package. And I know I've been approached by many residents, and certainly the committee and ourselves. We thank you for this. Next slide, please. So there was an update to this slide that I sent out to you that came through some comments at our meeting on Wednesday. It doesn't change anything materially on it, but if you have the update, look at the update. It's a little easier to understand. And this is sort of a scorecard that we came up with right at the onset, really, not the summer past, the summer before. And we looked at the sort of problems across the top, odor, light, traffic, and so on, all the way over to financial costs to the community. And then down the rows, we looked at the different tools that we would develop, from the interim control bylaw all the way down to fence and fortification shown here. And on the left-hand side, there's two arrows, two blue arrows, and those two tools, one of them is passed, the Odorous Industries Nuisance Bylaw. The second one is a light bylaw that's being developed presently. So this is kind of a forecast of where we'll be at the end of this year. And those two with the arrows, the blue arrows on the left, if you scroll all the way over to the right-hand side, you'll see that they both say all, meaning that those two bylaws will affect all cannabis operations existing, as well as new cannabis operations. So I'm distinguishing on the right which of the tools only apply to new cannabis or industrial hemp versus existing and new. So that's the notations on the right-hand side. And that's why you'll see, if you look at the zoning bylaw or the official plan amendments, those are really dealing with new applications. Our goal here is to get at least one green check mark in each column. So the green check mark means that we think we have a direct impact on the adverse effect, and a yellow check mark is an indirect impact. As I say, there's more yellow check marks in the one that was sent out as a revision, if you're looking at that one. But you'll see there is a green check mark in each column. So when we finish the light bylaw, we believe we'll at least have one direct hit, if you will, on each of the adverse effects across the top. If we go to the next slide, please. So at the present time, the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, the odor bylaw, even the interim control bylaws, those are under appeal. So we don't need anything today, really, other than just to encourage us to stay on the course that we're on. We've got lawyers and experts defending the product they helped develop. These are going to take some time to work through. It could even be a couple of years. But fortunately, with the outside help, they won't add a significant burden to staffing. There are legal fees, of course. We're all mindful of those. And I certainly have had residents reaffirm, as they did at the beginning, that they want us to get the job done well. And even if that means increased taxes, they're all very supportive of the work product. I do want to commend Councillors Hahn and Hildebrand and all of Council. I saw, as I was catching up, a resolution on October 5th that was endorsed to seek support from our neighbors, some of our neighboring communities who our enforcement team responds to, as well as the federal and provincial governments. And certainly from our review, our research, we think that's a very justified request to seek that assistance. It'd be another thing to get it, but I think certainly there maybe are opportunities at the government level, at least through our own interactions, where I think the request is worthwhile. With respect to these, the odor bylaw in particular, and the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments that are under various appeal action, should any questions arise, by all means, please reach out to us on those. We're certainly remain to answer any questions and be at your service. I want to pivot now, the next slide, please, to sorry, this was just hold the hold the course. We're comfortable with the committee, certainly comfortable with where we're at, and we're looking forward. I know the community is looking forward to getting these actions to work their way through. And I think we've already seen some committee members at least wanting to participate by attending just to show their support. So thank you for the work that you've encouraged us to do and for supporting it. And so I'll pivot now to the next slide, which is really our go forward work plan. So the committee has met and we have put together this list of 6 items that will carry us through this next year. The first is, pardon me, the first is to support the town and enforcement staff with completing the implementation of the odorous industries nuisance bylaw, the odor bylaw. Presently, our odor expert has been retained by the town, and we're helping to support them in the design of the contractor implemented odor monitoring program. So we'll help support and complete that. The light bylaw, we've been given a draft before we took our break from staff, and we've looked at that draft for the light bylaw, and we're bringing some amendments to that draft. The amendments basically concern sky glow, which we're going to add to that bylaw. And it's a broader bylaw. It's about all kinds of outdoor lighting issues that would work together towards darker skies. But the piece we're working on, and we'll bring it to through the committee to staff, is on the sky glow part of the bylaw. We're also going to develop a residence guide for the cannabis regulatory framework for the various tools that we've developed and will continue to develop. And simply put, the residence guide just turns this into English so that all of us can understand what we've created and how these tools work together. It's hard to, even for us, it's hard to pick up an amendment number 9 to an official plan and look at the legal language, if you will, and try and understand what it was that we put together. So this will be a guide that will assist residents, committee members, staff, everybody. It'll put it in plain and simple. It'll bring it together. One of the elements that will be featured in that guide, and there was a bit of a sneak preview of it last week in The Voice, was how do you file a PSR complaint? How do you, and it's not trivial, and so it's good to be able to provide that kind of basic usage to residents. 4 and 5 just deal with support, information support that we'll continue to provide to the town, to legal counsel as it arises in relation to any questions they have concerning those appeals. And then the last item, number 6, relates to looking at designated grow ops, which is becoming a bigger issue for many communities, our own included, but we've seen plenty around us. So what we're going to do is do a bit more research and then take a look at the various tools that have been approved, look at the gaps in those tools, and possibly consider bringing something forward that once the research is conducted, that maybe relates directly to designated grow ops. So that's the scope of what we currently have on our agenda for the coming year, and we think that'll certainly take us through the coming year. With that, I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for that great report, Tim. Any questions from any members of council? I can't see anybody's hands right now, so just bear with us until we get the screen back. So we'll start with Councillor Hahn.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thanks very much, Tim, for all your work and the work of your committee. It's amazing how you just keep on ticking, and that's amazing. I have 3 questions actually, so I think it probably makes the most sense if I ask them and you answer, so that we don't get lost in them. But my first question to you is, what steps are needed to fully implement the odorous industries nuisance bylaw?
Okay, so there's great question. There's two real components from the implementation standpoint to the bylaw. One is, and I tried to describe this very briefly in the article last week. One is the component that enforcement staff would execute, and they've started that. Where they take a nasal ranger and they go out and take measurements at, say, the property line of a facility, or if a resident calls with a complaint. So that's underway. I think there'll be some maybe additional training there, and certainly that ties directly in with our complaint system, our PSR system, and I know staff are looking, and we're going to provide some suggestions on how that might be improved. So those will kind of follow along, I believe, but that's operational, at least at some level. The second component really underpins the bylaw, and it's the contractor odor monitoring program. So it requires an environmental firm that would compete for that work. And what they would do is they would carry out random measurements on a designed grid around each of the major facilities. So the town's retained the odor expert who is designing those grids. So the odor expert is working for us now and is designing following industry guidelines and regulations. This is done in other industries, defining a receptor grid that begins around the facilities and kind of works its way out. And what they do then is, that's what the contractor will carry out for us, and they'll charge the industry for those costs. That's what the bylaw provides. And so we still have to finish the design, compete it to the environmental contractor, and then have the environmental contractor start collecting that data. So that's the, and then there's some sort of licensing mechanism that'll need to be implemented in order to charge those costs in accordance with the bylaw to the industry. So I think that those would be the 3 points I would say to finish the implementation.
Okay, thank you. So the next question was one I was going to ask, but you led me to it anyhow, is that when can you implement, like when can this be completed, ready to go? What's your time frame?
Time frame to implement? We obviously were overly optimistic when we signed up to 90 days after it was approved back in March, and COVID has kind of interrupted that. I think realistically now it could be done because it's already operational on the first component, and we know what we're doing now. The odor consultant is retained. He's got his he's ready to go. He's got his designs in, or at least the first one, just waiting on feedback. I would say probably 90 days, 120 days. If we set up some scheduling, I think that would certainly be achievable.
So I've got another question as well, but I think I'm just going to ask at this point in time, if I might, if Mr. CAO, if you can comment, is this something that is feasible based on, like, do you have a staff schedule to work on the 90 to 120 days? Is that doable?
Well, as a global, it's distinctly possible. We're working through right now. We're conducting some analysis of the first stage of the first consultant's work. So I would imagine we have a meeting, maybe even tomorrow, to discuss that further. Mr. Nohara is correct. If it is council's desire to make this sort of a user pay system, then we have to explore some aspect of business licensing, which in turn will require at least one more bylaw, and we'll have to create a regulatory regime, probably not dissimilar to what council has recently done for short-term rental accommodation, which to my knowledge is our first sort of activist foray into licensing businesses. So that will take some time too, but at least I think as a broad proposition, I think we understand generally how that could work. It will take some time to work through the specifics, and you're looking at least one more, but probably two more reports from staff, possibly in conjunction with the CCC, to yourselves to sort of make some decisions on how that'll actually play out in reality and on the ground. But 90 to 100 days doesn't strike me as an impossible goal or particularly unrealistic based on what I currently know.
Thank you. And I've got one last question actually from Mr. Nahara. And that is if you could just speak to the contractor monitoring component of the outdoor industries nuisance bylaw and just the significance. How important is that?
I'd say it's the critical piece. It's really what underpins the bylaw we developed and approved. Let me just think of the easiest way to maybe describe it. It's collecting the regular gridded data around each facility all the time randomly within a budget. So let's say around each facility, there's maybe 20 or 30 locations from close on the road to further out to a kilometer away or more. What the contractor will do is they'll randomly go out with their own odor meters and take measurements. They'll do it at nighttime, they'll do it during the day, they'll look at wind conditions. So this is a science that they carry out in other heavy odorous industries. And that's what they do. They'll always do it. They'll always be collecting it. That'll provide the backdrop of what's happening in the odor environment in our community, specifically starting with the major facilities and fanning out. So that data is going to teach us how odor works around these facilities. And it's collected all the time. And it's got tools, and it's going to be published on a website for everybody simultaneously. So it'll educate the community because we know there's complaints out there, but it'll educate the community. It'll be done by independent experts. So it'll be defensible. There won't be any bias in there, potential, if there's any allegations of that. It'll support our underlying defense for sure. If we're going to, our bylaw has AMPS fines, which are intended to, be used in small cases. But the idea is if there's a repeat offender, we have provisions in the bylaw that we have to go through trouble going to court, but there's serious fines potentially, including if we have a repeat offender that isn't cooperating, even a temporary shutdown of a facility. So for those, this was designed so that the odor experts would be testifying, and they'd have data, consistent data all the time, designed following the Ontario regulations for those designs. So I'd say it's critical on that respect, on the underlying defensibility. I think it has a tactical value too. So we have limited enforcement resources that have a lot of work to do in addition to now dealing with cannabis odor. So this data, which will be collected in the background and be available almost immediately on a website, this data is going to help inform how enforcement schedules their people for going out, for example, for random measurements, because it's kind of like tapping the weather. It's the odor, it's the weather, the ambient odor, the ambient weather patterns. So this data will help inform. It'll be presented in a way that is readable. And it'll help inform how we schedule what I would call the tactical component, the component where either there's a complaint that comes in and enforcement responds if they're able, or they're out doing their own property line or measurements as they're out patrolling or doing other things. So I think it's very important.
Great, thank you, and thanks again for putting the piece in the local paper recently as far as PSR and how to lodge a complaint. Thank you for doing that.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dr. Nohara. I too would like to acknowledge and appreciate the work of your committee, and especially the article that you put in the paper, because I think that is that's going to be a key part of this, is the control and of the complaints and the responses to them. As the CAO will tell you, I'm pushing the PSR system. What did you think when you designed your article? How easy is it to operate? And I also want to ask you, one of the goals has to be to be able to make a complaint with the least number of keystrokes. Is it a complicated system in your mind?
It's two great questions. I guess the first thing I would say, we're all in this together. The first thing I would say is the system was designed for a broad number and types of complaints. So I think that kind of leads into both of your questions. So it's not that easy when it comes to filing cannabis odor complaints. And that's why we felt there was a need to communicate, at least, and provide some guidance. I know myself, I'm reasonably good with computers, and enforcement staff was gracious with me because I filed my first 2 complaints improperly. I actually didn't realize I went under air quality. I thought that's where it seemed reasonable. Started in the A's. There were about 100 odd selections from the list, and it wasn't until I committed to trying to put some guidance to the community that I went through it more thoroughly, and I found enforcement by law enforcement, and under there was a sub menu and with a number of items, and in there was cannabis odor. So I filed 3 complaints. I figured I better use it if I'm going to write some guidance on behalf of the committee and the town. So I waited till there were opportunities for it. I don't get too many where I am. So it is challenging, I would say. What I think makes it more frustrating to residents, because they've called, is that it's a third-party system. I don't think this is our system. We subscribe to it, I imagine. But it behaves differently with different computers, and that is one of the issues in a system like this. They need to be maintained against different computer operating systems and against different browsers. So I was actually on with Councillor Hildebrand, who's not here, and we were both trying to use it together, and it was kind of amusing. Saying, "Come on, Bob, aren't you seeing what I'm seeing?" Well, he was using a Mac and Safari, so there are differences. I think they can be dealt with, and I think we need to provide some guidance so that it can work. But I think it can work. But I think part of it is just empathizing what residents who have tried it have felt. And so hopefully the guidance will help, and the other work that is being done. We have some suggestions that we think are easy to make. We're going to bring them forward to staff so they can at least consider them and see if we can make it a little easier for residents.
Thank you.
And Madame Clerk would like to comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to inform members of council that if you are on the municipal website, there's a cannabis tile on the front page. That's the fastest way to get to the complaint process through PSR, is through the cannabis tile directly on the homepage. So it might speed things up a little bit, but certainly all of the comments by the CCC are being taken into consideration by the group looking at the PSR system.
Okay. Thank you for that, Madame Clerk. Councillor Wink.
So, Tim, I just want to reiterate what some of the other councillors have been saying is sincerely appreciate all the hard work that you and your committee have done for council, but also for all the residents in the area, and keep up the good work. Just a question on the dark skies bylaw, whatever you want to call it. I know probably back in July, staff made a commitment that the bylaw would be such that it wasn't specifically aimed at cannabis, so it would be less defensible and whatever. I guess you've got their draft now from what you're saying. When can we expect this bylaw? Because I know light glow has been a big complaint, probably the second biggest complaint after odor. So any idea when we can see at least a draft?
So I'm hoping, as I say, there is a draft that was provided to us, and that is in draft form already. And I think the structure's fine. We're hoping to add the sky glow piece, which is the piece I think you're referring to. It's the spaceship glow that we see sometimes. And I would say we could probably have a draft, meaning the bylaws amended, ready to look at some level by the end of the year. So a couple months, 60 days, we could have that. So we've looked at it. We know what we need to do. And now we just have to actually do it. And so I would say probably before the Christmas break, we would hope to have some edits back to staff for review. If you may remember, you may not, it's been such a long time, but when we did the original odorous industries nuisance bylaw, we actually had that piece in there. And in early March of last year, we decided to take out the light portion from that odor bylaw so that we bring it into a broader bylaw. So we actually have a starting point, and so we need to bring that into this new draft of a dark skies bylaw, and that's the approach we're going to take, Councillor Winks, to take what we had done before because we had it reviewed, and we'll bring it into the draft that was sort of derived from scratch to be a much broader bylaw. There are a few technical questions that are being researched right now, and even just this past week, there were some other communities that have introduced combined light and odor or separate light and odor bylaws. And so we're looking at anything that's available. I'd say certainly before the Christmas break, I think we could bring something forward that at least you could comment on, at least we could get discussion around.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? So, Tim, a few questions, if I may. As you know, we have a communications expert on staff. So when your committee, and I don't know what qualifications, for all I know, maybe you got a communications expert on the committee. You seem to have a wide range of expertise on that committee, and I commend you for that. So I take it that, do you see, and I don't think you see it this way, the normal process would be staff would write the booklet, shall we say, and then it would go to your committee for refinements or comments. I don't think you're saying that, though.
Is this with respect to using the complaint system?
No. This is you were saying early on, or during your presentation, that you could see the Cannabis Control Committee putting out a booklet for public use.
Sure. Yeah, a resident's guide. So,
yes, there we go. Yes.
I mean, certainly if our communications team or staff develops something, we'd be glad to comment on it. One of the challenges, I think, and it's just a practical challenge, is just the time frame and the other things that are being done. So the resident's guide is something that we think we can undertake. We'd be glad to get help, but we think we can undertake it. We haven't started it yet. So there's no, the idea is to really get it in a way that addresses the concerns of residents. So if something came to us and would be easier for us to review and redirect, or if we agreed, one of the first things we'll do is, we haven't started it, is we'll draft a table of contents and we'll bring it to the committee for comment. So the way we tackle these things, you've seen with the regulatory framework, is we give a lot of thought initially to what the structure should look like, what the content should be, what the objectives are, so we can kind of see the whole thing. And then we kind of get into the detail and do the research and the back work. So be very happy to work on any and all of that with any volunteers.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Tim. Any other questions from any councillors? Not seeing any, and I'll be repetitious, Tim. This council thanks you and the members of your committee for the time you have put into this whole effort. It's the ground the committee has covered is certainly extensive, and the community appreciates the countless hours that you and your troops have put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation information from Tim Nohara, Chair of the Cannabis Control Committee. With no further questions.
Good night, everybody.
Oh. Good night, Tim.
With no further questions to the presenter, Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Excuse me. Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Good night, everybody.
And Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the approval of council minutes. I do have a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C-17, regular council minutes of October 19th. If you'd like to ask for comment on the minutes.
Any comments, questions on those? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And this vote starts back with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion is carried. I don't have any business arising from the council minutes listed. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration. That would be if a member of council wants to change the resolution from what was presented.
And is there any councillor that would like to lift a consent agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I'm just trying to keep caught up here. So on a motion from Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hahn, be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the November 2nd, 2020 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Firstly, there are the recommendations from the public meeting under the Planning Act held on October 13th, followed by the minutes of the public meeting. And there is an information correspondence item being the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority 2019 annual report to be received for information. And the City of Thorold has presented their response to the town's resolution with regard to cannabis legal fees. They received our correspondence for information. Enbridge Gas, the 2021 Federal Carbon Pricing Program Notice of Application has been submitted. And committee minutes for information, the Cannabis Control Committee minutes dated July 22nd to be received for information. Are there any items of discussion with no change to the resolutions, Mr. Mayor?
I'll ask any discussion on any of the consent agendas without changing the resolution. I'm not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Then the vote starts with Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next item of business on the council agenda is a staff report, the 2020 Bridge and Culvert Inspection Program. Moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council receive report 2020-0157, 2020 Bridge and Culvert Inspection Program and Rehabilitation and Replacement Needs for information purposes. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions.
Yep. Any councillor questions or comments on this Public Works report? Yeah, Councillor Wink.
So, Director, thank you very much for the report. Is there any way that you can get the priority ranking on the condition for a complete list of bridges and culverts in Pelham? Like, is it a lengthy report? You know, I know they're recommending a number of bridges that need attention. In our capital budget, we've only got one bridge that's going to be addressed this year. We've got $20,000 for roadside barriers in our budget, yet the recommendation by the consultant says that we should be spending roughly $98,750. Just like to see the ranking of all the different bridges and culverts.
Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. In the spirit of trying to keep the amount of pages that we submit with the agenda short, I haven't provided the full report. I provided the engineer's summary, but I'd be more than happy to somehow get that information to council, the complete report. There are 23 structures and major culverts in the town as part of our inventory. Out of those 23 structures, there's 3 that are recommending complete replacement, one of those of which will be presented to you next week as part of the capital budget presentation. And in subsequent years, over the next 2-3 years, we complete the design and hopefully reconstruction of and replacement of those other bridges and major culverts. So the way that the assessment is completed is there's an assessment that's done based on the overall general condition of the structure or major culvert. And then there's also a needs analysis that's completed. So some of those needs are recommending replacement, major rehabilitation. Some of those needs are minor works in nature, such as scour protection, placing ripraps at the ends of the outlets for the culverts, that type of thing to prevent erosion. But that report is very detailed, and it does provide a detail on all those needs analysis, and I'd be more than happy to get that together for council.
Thank you.
Councillor Wink, thank you. Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. I think this is quite a good report, actually. It's manageable, and it's almost the same as the road report. If you read it carefully, it's got a lot of promise in it. It doesn't look like it's the dire emergency that some people might think it is. I was just wondering, I know that there's an asset management system. You're going to be having that in place, and you've told me that there's going to be by the ID number attached to each of the 23 culverts and bridges. I would wonder if Teresa could comment on whether this will be put into the asset management system, and will you have a cost attached to it? So as you go out into the future years, and perhaps a priority list that goes with it?
Yep. So through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, this most definitely is part of the asset management plan, and we will be putting in the condition of the bridges and culverts as part of the assessment of the asset, and then with that will be the replacement value. So that definitely is part of the plan.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on this report? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. And this voting starts with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. I don't have any unfinished business, new business, or presentation and consideration of bylaws scheduled on this agenda. Mr. Mayor, the next item of business is under motions and notices of motion. Council will recall last meeting there were 3 notices of motion given, all now being presented. The first motion is the, sorry, just need to get them in the same order. The first motion is by Councillor Stewart, and Councillor Hildebrand was going to second the motion as printed on the agenda, so I will need another individual to second this motion, and I see Councillor Hahn. So I will have, so on a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Whereas Council for the Town of Pelham wishes to explore the potential of requiring that development proponents be mandated to engage the surrounding neighborhood of their proposed development area in a pre-application public meeting prior to submitting development proposals to the town for consideration and approval. And whereas Council is aware that the City of Burlington has adopted a process to successfully mandate this process, and whereas Council believes this process will serve to build community confidence in a development proposal whereby developers and community stakeholders would have an opportunity to engage with each other with a view toward working together for the betterment of all. And whereas it is believed that this will result in cost savings for developers in that it will demonstrate that community concerns have been taken into consideration prior to the formal application process beginning. Now therefore, be it resolved that Council directs staff to engage with the City of Burlington to investigate the pre-application public meeting process the City has enacted and report back to Council on how the Town of Pelham might adopt a similar model to benefit the growing community of Pelham. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you for bringing that motion forward, Councillor Stewart. Any questions, comments? So I will have a question to the Director of Planning, and then possibly to Councillor Stewart. So Ms. Waynes, I'm thinking back to when we did the charrette for 1120 Hay Street, and when we also did the open house at the Fenwick, East Fenwick project subdivision. Would you, are those two events to me seem that we've already taking that step? Would you comment on this, and then I'll ask Councillor Stewart perhaps to comment. But yeah, you first, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly the charrette process did engage a lot of community members. It was spread over, the actual kind of charrette was spread over 3 days, but then there was two other points where there was going back to the community and presenting various options and getting feedback. And so that happened as well as the actual charrette. The East Fonthill secondary plan, there's been a number of open houses that we've held to look at various land use plans for the East Fenwick area, and have really brought the community along in terms of those conversations and discussions. And you'll recall that the Hay Street official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, they were adopted by council and they were not appealed by any member of the community. So there was some community certainly support and buy-in as a result of the charrette process.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Stewart, I think when I read on the last paragraph, indeed, I guess you just, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't want to put words in your mouth by any means, you just want to make sure or see if indeed the city of Burlington is doing more than we are, and perhaps it would be beneficial for us to take part of some of their habits. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not saying that we're not doing a good job. That's not the implication at all. But this is another step to be taken. For example, the lot on Allen Crescent. The developer bought the property, and all of a sudden it comes to the town, and the people are outraged and upset. Or the one on Haste Street, Haste and Pancake, had the person developing it come and talk to the residents first before showing up with pictures and plans to get a feel for the community and explain what their ideas are, and talk to the stakeholders in the community where they can work together to find something that can be profitable for the developer and palatable for the neighborhood at the same time, before spending money on having plans drawn up and starting the whole application process.
Okay, great. So you're more or less saying perhaps we should be starting the developer should be starting the process sooner. I take it that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess pretty much so. But I know from what I've read about the Burlington process that it's worked out very well for them. Originally, they started it as a voluntary thing, where most of the developers were on board with it, and it worked out very well, and now it's been mandated.
Okay, thank you for that information. Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd certainly echo Councillor Stewart's comments. At a staff level, we do encourage the developers to certainly speak to their neighbors and try to get some feedback from the neighbors before they make formal application to us, because it's always better, trying to work with your neighbors early on in the process. And we've seen some success of that. Certainly when the Fonthill Lumber Yards was redeveloped, the developer in that case did hold a neighborhood meeting on his own. There's been other ones that have been held. Certainly Leviathan was one that held a neighborhood meeting on their own. One Pancake Lane has as well, and there have been a number of other ones as well. Those are just some of the bigger ones that have held neighborhood meetings. So it is something that we do encourage the developers to do, but as Councillor Stewart has indicated, we don't have a process where we mandate it. It is over and above what would be required under the Planning Act.
Great. Thank you for those comments. Any other comments before we call the vote on the resolution? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, the vote will begin with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. And the next item included on the agenda is the motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. And I apologize, Councillor Stewart, I didn't turn the floor over to you if you wanted to read that motion. My apologies. Councillor Hahn, do you prefer to read the motion, or do you wish me to read it into the record?
Sure, I can read that. That's no problem.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, so it is a motion made by yourself and seconded by Councillor Stewart.
Correct. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham approve the creation of a short-term working group for the Councillor Chofi dedication project. The specific purpose of this working group is to assess and make recommendations for alterations and enhancements to the second floor bar servery area at the Meridian Community Center. This working group will be provided with an initial budget from the Chofi Family Memorial Fund and fundraising through community donations. And that Council appoint myself, Councillor Lisa Hahn, to chair said working group, and further that Council appoint Vicki Van Ravensway, Director of Recreation, Culture and Wellness, as staff liaison to the working group, and further that Council appoint Michelle Chofi, Patricia Shannon, Chair of the Hospitality Committee, and Ward 1 Councillor Stewart as working group members. And further that should other members of Council be interested and willing to participate, to indicate such interest at this time, recognizing that a maximum of 3 members of Council would be appointed to ensure compliance with quorum restrictions. And further that Council direct a report back with recommendations by January 2021.
So before we go to the rest of Council, again, we should follow a different protocol. Councillor Hahn, do you have any comments on your motion?
I certainly do. So I just want to reiterate that this isn't a kind of a flash in the pan random idea to tackle this MCC servery area. This is a project, and I actually have with me, and I can give you the dates if you like, but it's a project that the Hospitality Committee was working towards. It started, I have minutes, and these are minutes approved by Council. I have minutes dating back to October 16th through to November, and then again in January and March. And they were moving forward with this project. This is something that was very important to Mike. He was excited about this project. I know that the Director of Recreation could easily speak to the fact that this was something that was important to Mike. I also have had conversations with Patricia Shannon, the lead of the committee, the Hospitality Committee chair, and she too is supportive of this, very much so, and she's also supplied me with a letter to that effect, which I can read if need be. So this is something that I think is very appropriate. Mike is a very social individual. It's very fitting that it would be at the MCC. He was very proud of the MCC, spent a lot of time there, was very engaged in the user group, in the Hospitality Committee, attended many events and sporting events. So it's a fitting venue. It's something that I know the Chofi family is very keen on as well, and would like to, basically all of us would like to see through something that we know Mike wanted to accomplish. So we're seeing essentially through Mike's wishes. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from any members of Council? Okay, so, Councillor Wink.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, a lot of the areas of the community center have had naming rights, whether it's a stairwell or meeting rooms or whatever. Had we had any prior desire of any other companies in the community did they express they wanted naming rights for the servery?
If you're directing that towards me, Councillor Wink, I have asked that question of the Director of Recreation, and I believe the answer is
so. Yeah, so I was directing that to the director. Sorry, and perhaps Ms. Quinlan might have some insight on that also.
Vicki, you want to go first? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Teresa. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have, if the server is not named right now, there is no name. I don't know, Vicki, if you're in contact with anyone who is interested, but if the survey does not currently have a sponsor there, then it's open, but Vicki, you're more in contact with any potential sponsors.
Okay. Thank you for that, Director of Finance. And I will go to Director of Rec, Ms. Van Ravensway.
For you, Mr. Mayor, the lounge area is pledged by Mountain View Homes. The actual bar area is not. And I have not received any requests for that. Here we are.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, Councillor Stewart, as a seconder, I should have given you a chance to speak to the motion itself, and I apologize for that. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yes, I think it's a fitting tribute to Mike because he was so interested in that, and it's not that it's a new project. It's a project that was already underway, and he was part of the guiding force for it. I do have one question for the Director of Recreation. Aside from dedicating this project to Councillor Ciolfi, prior to Councillor Hahn's putting this notice of motion in, had any other community group put anything forward to recognize Mike?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the only group that has done anything was the adoption of the garden outside the MCC.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I've got one question. I would, under normal circumstances, I would put it forward as a friendly amendment, but instead I'll just ask the question without putting it in an amendment. I was wondering, and either Councillor Hahn or Councillor Stewart, you're in Ward 1, but whoever, I have been approached by at least 2 or 3 residents from Ward 1 who, seeing as Mike was indeed their alderman, they were wondering if there was any way this task force could look further afield, if not obviously taking the survey into effect, but also at the same time saying, okay, there's that option, but are you prepared to look at any other options, whether it be in Ward 1, whether it be, I won't bother naming them, just would this task force be prepared to look at any other options, or are you satisfied with just looking at the one? Sorry. I see Councillor Stewart, you have your hand.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know. I think this is a great option because as councillors, we're each elected in our own ward, but we serve as councillors for the whole town. And the whole town does use the community center where they don't necessarily use any of our facilities in Ward 1. So I think it's a better place for a tribute to Mike.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hahn, any comments on that? Or
Yes, through you, Mayor. I would echo that. The MCC Mike was passionate about the MCC and sports in general. And I think that I'm very satisfied and I'm honored to be a part of this opportunity to make a dedication to Councillor Ciolfi. So I'm very pleased that hopefully if this satisfies council that we can do this at the MCC. I wouldn't object to bringing forward to the working group if approved. Another initiative, perhaps like a ball diamond or something like that, or soccer field or something of that nature in Centennial Park, in addition to, but certainly this is the project. This is the one I want to see done because I know this is something Mike wanted to see done. So this is why I'm so passionate about this particular project. But like I said, I wouldn't object to bringing forward to the working group other ideas in addition to.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions on the motion before we call the vote? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This vote will start with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Members of council, the next item is a motion put forward by Mayor Junkin and seconded by Councillor Olson. This portion of the meeting does need to be chaired by someone other than the mayor to put the motion forward. Normally, it would be through our deputy mayor, Councillor Hildebrand. However, he is not available at the meeting this evening, so with council's indulgence, the next deputy mayor in line would be Councillor Stewart. If there's no objection, she has agreed to chair this portion of the meeting. Seeing no objection, Councillor Stewart, do you wish me to read the motion into the record, or do you wish to read it into the record, or does the mayor wish to read his motion into the record as presented?
I would like to read it.
Okay, so the mayor is stepping down from the chair, and he will read the motion into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. Whereas the town of Pelham contains the headwaters of two branches of the 12-Mile Creek, which is the last remaining year-round cold water stream in the region of Niagara, and whereas the 12-Mile Creek is a habitat for brook trout, and whereas Council for the town of Pelham is committed to working with the environment, and whereas members of Trout Unlimited, an organization that the town has a memorandum of understanding with, have brought to this council's attention that the stormwater management pond located at the southwest corner of Rice Road and Regional Road 20 is not operating as designed, and whereas two defects in the stormwater management pond are cited. First, the water outflowing from the pond is causing severe erosion on the north side of Regional Road 20. And secondly, the water flowing from the pond is at an unacceptable temperature when it enters the stream flowing to the 12-Mile Creek, as determined by sensors placed by Trout Unlimited. And whereas the erosion is causing significant sediment problems further downstream, which is negatively impacting the fish habitat. And whereas, as the town continues to develop the land area draining into the stormwater management pond, the runoff into the pond will continue to escalate, discoursing more water into the stream in what is obviously an unsatisfactory manner. Now therefore it be resolved that Council for the town of Pelham does hereby instruct the appropriate town staff in consultation with any regional Niagara officials and any engineering firms that planned and designed this stormwater management pond to conduct a technical review of all aspects of the pond, including but not restricted to determining the total land area draining into the pond and determining whether the pond is properly sized to accommodate water being received, determining what mechanisms are in place to slow the overflow and investigating why they are not working, and recommending what further steps can be taken to reduce the temperature of the outflowing waters. And further, that before the report is brought to council, all technical information be provided to Trout Unlimited for their review and comment. Now, before I pass this back to the Deputy Mayor, I have to right away make an amendment to this motion, as it is not standard procedure for this council to put a motion to direct staff to carry out a report and then have that report go to an outside third party before it comes to council. So obviously, as mayor, I want to, as every other council member should, follow protocols that are in place. So I want to scratch the, and further that before the report is brought to council, all technical information be provided to Trout Unlimited for their review and comment. I want to scratch that from the motion, and then what can happen if indeed Trout Unlimited wants to comment. Once staff has brought this report back to council, the report is then public knowledge. And if Trout Unlimited then wants to study the technical details and then want to make their own presentation to council, then we will. That would be the correct step to follow. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your indulgence.
Yes, thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments on this? Yes, Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. I'm speaking in favor of the motion because I've observed personally the force of the water coming out of that culvert and the damage that's been done to the land of owned by the Lions Club and Pelham Cares. And I think I think when we start looking at more pavement and more roofs and more drainage into the system, it's just going to get worse.
Does anyone else have any commentary?
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Krebs?
Would it be acceptable to council for us to interpret the request as meaning however much consultation can be done with private sector third parties that costs $0? We can certainly have interaction with the region that was involved with the original program. I understand the conservation, sorry, this all predates my employment, and Mr. Myers as well for that matter. But the Conservation Authority, I understand, was involved, possibly the Ministry of the Environment was involved. So that's 3 other government entities. And at least one engineering firm.
Yeah.
But we were thinking this over the last hour or two, or at least the hour or two before council started, and there may be a finite amount of this that can be done without budgetary dollars associated there too, and currently this is not a budgeted task. So if it please count, assuming this is the will of council, and we certainly understand there are some erosion issues, absolutely, it's I think undeniable to anyone who goes there and looks with eyes. It's there to be seen, but perhaps we could interpret this to be go forward without spending resources at this time, or this could become an item that ultimately would be referred to budget, or it's becomes an unbudgeted expenditure. If Ms. Quinlan or Mr. Marr have anything to add? It's fundamentally a good initiative, but and I think a needed one, but we don't have any money set aside for it, to be clear.
Councillor, if I may, Councillor Stewart, may I speak to this?
Yes, you may.
Oh, Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the reason I initially wanted a peer review of this, I wanted to go outside the region. I wanted to bring another outside engineering firm in, but in respect to the financial constraints that this budget is indeed, that this council is indeed feeling, and having faith in town staff, I have no problem at all if we can do a thorough review of the technical aspects of this town, of the pond, and then we'll go from there. Definitely sure. I guess there was one other thing that I did want to say that isn't in the motion, and that is I don't have to tell this council, I don't have to remind this council that when we first took office back in the fall of 2018, we had to tackle a lawsuit that was brought on by a resident about another stormwater management pond. We settled that. It was a feather in our cap that we settled a 20-year lawsuit between the resident and the town. We settled that, but it was a price. I can't name the price, but you all remember how much we paid for that. And it bothers me that, and council should know this, that in the next month, we will be doing another storm pond at the end of Station Street. And that storm pond is costing us over $100,000 to fix. And now we've got our third storm pond that has to be fixed. It's disheartening that this town is spending good money looking after mistakes, if I can call them mistakes, that were supposed to be solved by engineered ponds. Something is not right. Either these firms are not taking into consideration the silt soils of the Kame, or I don't know what it is, but the residents of this town should not be paying this kind of money for engineered projects. And that is why I'm encouraging council to pass this motion. And like the Chinese say, the first longest journey starts with the first step. This will be the first step in finding out what is the problem with our management, stormwater management ponds. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Moore, Director of Public Works.
Yes, to you, Deputy Mayor. So I echo the CAO's opinion on staff bringing a report back to this council. There's substantial information, design work, pre and post studies, monitoring the outflow at this particular location and the pond. So there's substantial amount of resources that have already been put in place to get the approvals. The pond was approved by the Ministry of Environment, the NPCA, our governing regulatory agencies. So there's a lot of work, engineering work and reports that have been completed to date. So that is definitely something that staff can put together with limited resources and put a report together, provide that information and background on the pond and the area for that matter prior to development, and show the history of the issues with temperature and erosion at this particular outlet. So that's something that definitely staff can bring forward to this council with a report, kind of a summary of everything that led us up to this point. I'm happy to work on that to provide that.
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Marr. I have a question. These storm management ponds that we're having trouble with, do you know if they were all designed by the same engineering firm?
Yes, they were.
Through.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were taking the question to. I'm sorry, Director. I'm sorry.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure exactly who designed the ponds to begin with. The one particular pond that we'll be starting very shortly was designed by not the same engineer who designed the pond at Rice Road. So the rehabilitation works is designed by a separate engineer. I can't say for certain who originally designed the original pond, but again, stormwater management ponds, there is a maintenance requirement that needs to be undertaken, and eventually they need to be maintained and in some cases reconstructed. We are blessed or not blessed with particularly silty, sandy soil, which tends to erode very quickly. So that's definitely something that we need to take into consideration when we do our designs. And I'm confident that the project that we're starting relatively in short order has those design measures in place. I do know by looking at some of the reports and diving a little deeper into the engineering work that was done at Rice Road, there was substantial over-design done with that pond with respect to controlling flows out of the pond, controlling the water quality, and controlling temperature. So these are additional measures that were put in place during the design phase for this pond, and again approved by the Ministry of Environment and the NPCA. And I'd be more than happy to get a report together for council to kind of summarize those investigations, the pre and post studies that were completed prior to the design of and construction of the pond, and then the reasons for the design of the pond.
Thank you, Mr. Marr. Councillor Hahn?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would just like to actually mirror the comments of the mayor, and that is I fully agree that these engineered ponds, you know, there's been engineers, there's been big bucks spent, and to think that this now would have to go be paid on the backs of taxpayers is just wrong on every level. So I'm very much in favor of our Director of Public Works putting together a report, kind of bringing us all up to speed as to what's been done, when, and how. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that just like doctors and lawyers, engineers too have medical or professional insurances. So that may be another consideration. I don't know to what degree somebody can dive into their insurance, but that's of course why you pay the dues you do to ensure things are engineered properly. So, but I'm looking forward to that report.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Oh, yes, Mr. Marr.
Through you, as Deputy Mayor, when we're speaking about a report, this council may want to consider some timelines for bringing that report back. It is going to be, even though it's going to be a fairly straightforward report in some sense to write, there is a lot of data collection, and there are a lot of reports to get through, as well as most likely interviews and meetings with the original designer of the facility, as well as the environmental approval agencies. So when discussing timelines for reporting back to council, just like to make council aware that the engineering department is a staff of 2 right now, and we're running on fumes here. So with respect to timelines for report back, I would ask for some consideration there by council.
Do you have an idea of what kind of timeline would be suitable?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm thinking in the new year we would bring a report back.
Okay, that's what I was thinking as well. Yes, Councillor Olson.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Marr. Could you also include in the report what the maintenance practices have been, and whether the subject pond has been maintained according to the specifications of the designer?
No.
I believe the CAO would like to make a comment.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to respond, Mr. Marr. Okay, Mr. Cribbs.
Mr. Marr is central to a number of fairly significant corporate initiatives at the moment. I would also add that as we currently stand, you have only one regular meeting of council in the month of January, where you will either be passing a budget or you'll be setting a special meeting to pass a budget, one assumes. So in light of those two factors and the fact that he's down to, he's an army of 2 for all engineering at the moment, which is 50% of his normal bench strength, I'd like to suggest we look at this for the last meeting in February. And gracious forgiveness if he can't hit that for the first meeting in March, I think would be an appropriate timeline for this one. It won't be your focus in the one meeting in January. It'll have to be budget as things currently stand.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, just to kind of ease things a little bit, instead of trying to peg down a date, let's just say at some point in Q1 of 2021.
Sounds reasonable.
Deputy Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor
That's the mayor.
Duncan.
That's the mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I guess then what you're saying is this Friday is definitely out. Okay, thank you. Like you say, the first step of the journey, I'm a little disappointed we got to go back that far, but at the same time, I understand that this is a very busy time of year for staff, budget-wise and what have you. So thank you for that.
Councillor Olson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, in response to my question about the maintenance practices and the policies and procedures for maintaining the pond, whether they've been followed. It's my experience that you can design all kinds of things, but when it comes to the management of it, it's usually in the maintenance and the failure to follow the policies and procedures to maintain it.
Yes, Director Marr?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. So we will definitely include that as part of the report, what the required maintenance activities were and what's been completed to date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, to the clerk, the mayor has made a few adjustments to his motion. So can you give us an updated version to vote on?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The mayor did ask that the last paragraph be stricken, so I would use the same seconder, Councillor Olson, and would prefer a vote specifically to remove that on that amendment.
Thank you. Can we have a vote on the amendment to remove the last paragraph?
So this vote would start with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Stewart.
Yes.
So that's carried. There were other directions given, but there were no further amendments through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So if there's no further discussion, I can call for the vote on the motion as amended.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And this vote will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And Madam Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
That motion carries as amended. And members of council, the next item on the agenda is the resolution to move into closed session. I have a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider various matters under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. For the first item, Section 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual. 239(2)I, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. And Section 239(2)J, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. The second item is under Section 239(2)B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, and there are various items under that subsection. So for the vote, Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And back to the mayor resuming the chair. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried. So if council will just give me a moment, please, to end the live stream, and I will confirm that in just a moment with you.
Okay. And thank you, Councillor Stewart, for taking over the chair for that motion. Thank you.
You're welcome.